Wrong guess there. All right. So saying hi. Today is my first episode here of Contact Center Talks. Little background on me, and I'm excited. I'll introduce our guest here, Marc. So I come from 24 years of running, operating call centers. Opened my first center when I was 19. Spent a long time in the charity fundraising as well as traditional telemarketing. So back in the day when Discover Card and all the other telemarketing campaigns, Quest Communications, AT&T, MCI. So I ran call centers throughout that decade, I guess you would say. And then all the way up into I was a president of a BPO in North Carolina. So kind of got some experience at every level in the call centers. So the idea of this show is to bring on great guests like Marc and let them, talk about what we see of the future of call centers, really where call centers came from and the idea of being able to give any best practices or really just troubleshooting areas that people are having issues with. So I spent a long time on the road. I've seen a lot of employees of Marc. Marc's the CEO of Balto, and I see Balto everywhere. So I'm with Noble Biz. I'm also at these shows, and I would say a couple of years ago there was no Balto really at any shows, and then boom, Balto makes a splash. I have a couple clients now that are actually doing demos and looking at Balto as a solution. So, Marc, welcome. Glad to have you.
That's awesome, Mike. Glad to be here. Glad our presence is blowing up, and excited for that to be just the start of what you all say.
Yeah, it'll be great. So earlier when me and Marc, we kind of got to know each other, just for a little bit. And Marc got kind of his start in the I would say the fitness space. You were an entrepreneur in high school, right?
Yeah, that's right. I started a personal training company when I was 18. I was a senior in high school. And, the reason wasn't that I wanted to start a company. It's that I had just gotten a personal training certification and wanted clients and said, I want to train people. So how do I do this? I guess I need to go get clients. So kind of fell into it from there and ended up over the next 5 years growing that company. We ended up hiring 5 trainers and building a network over 100 clients in the Washington metro area.
Awesome. That's different. So you went from, obviously you knew you're an entrepreneur at a very young age, right? So at what point did you say, hey, I'm going to go into business for myself, or, hey, I should go look for the job? At 18, you started your first business, but was there a point where you just knew it was always, or was there this aha moment that you said, okay, I want to go into business for myself?
Yeah. I actually never knew it until it happened. And that continued to be the pattern. I know some people, like one of our other founders and COO, Chris Contes, he knew from when he was like 5 or 6. He's at the dinner table with his parents and they're saying, you're going to start a business one day, son. And he says, yes, I'm going to start a business. It'll be the biggest, baddest business, on the East Coast, because he lived in the East Coast at the time. But the way that I've approached it is I try to be as observant as possible about the problems. And then I just hack together my own very basic out-of-the-box solution to those problems. And then very rarely am I ever actually the one with the idea. Even in Balto's case, I had created, before we created what we call real-time guidance, which is, for those who don't know, it's AI that understands, conversations with customers live while they're happening, and guides agents to be as effective as possible in every single interaction. Well, what I first did is I created an Excel macro, and it was for myself as a junior salesperson, where I noticed that different topics would come up. The customer would kind of throw me a curveball, and I would forget how to handle it. And I said, what if I had a macro? I could type the topic in, it would pop up, the key talking points for that topic. Well, I didn't say, let's turn that into Balto, let's turn into a business. Chris Contes, the founder COO, saw this and said, Marc, we need to do something with this. So
you got your start because you were actually seeing a problem that you were going through.
Yes.
Right. So
every time.
And in the space, we call those rebuttals, right? So that's what, in the contact center space. And we used to do a lot of different things with rebuttals. So we would obviously come up with the most, I would say the most common objections, right? We'd type them out. We used to hang them in the cubicle. And so I can still remember the day on the left side was not interested, so on and so forth. And we had our different rebuttals up in the cubicle. So if I hear you right, you basically said, hey, we can automate that, right? So, and you were kind of probably forward thinking at that point because of hybrid models and those type of things that you have now. You weren't physically in a center per se to where you could hang the rebuttals. So in your case, you said, hey, I'm having a really big problem with remembering all this or being able to use it or see it quick enough to where it makes sense in the conversation. So you created, like you said, a way to automate that.
I'd say that's pretty accurate. Fundamentally, the insight that sparked the business is that there is a gap between knowing what you're supposed to do or having an insight of what the best thing is to do. And it's another thing to actually do it live while you're talking with the customer.
Correct.
And our space in general, I would even just say the entire technology world is obsessed with generating insights. And that's great. And there's a lot of really awesome insights that we can parcel out from our data. But one of the things that Balto discovered is that a lot of folks don't lack insights. They actually have an insight backlog. They have all these insights that they've discovered that they can't actually apply to their contact center workforce in mass. What if you had a system that seamlessly took the different things you were learning about your business and scaled it out to everybody with the push of a button? So, Mike, the rebuttal sheet, if you will, isn't something you print out one day and you leave it there, and then the next cohort comes in, you say, oh, here's the rebuttal sheet. Imagine with Balto that is constantly testing every single interaction what the best thing is to say, swapping out the things that are not working, putting in the things that top performers are doing. It's this real live A/B testing system by recommending things to your contact center workforce at scale. So it's actually generating insights in a way that previously was not possible.
And that's awesome because let me put on my contact center manager hat for that I've had forever, right? So the only way that we were able to generate that is through duplication, right? So we had an agent that was very successful. So what did we do as managers? We would listen, we would rewrite scripts, we would figure out the things that are really making it work. Maybe we would even get on the phone and try to, what is the best thing to say at the right time? And then we would push that out to all the agents per se within the call center. So what I'm hearing is it's almost taking that process that the only way you're going to get that knowledge is doing it the way I just talked about. You're taking that process and you're automating that. You're making it a lot easier to access. And there's not just one keeper, right? So there's not just this one agent that knows all the information. And if that agent goes somewhere else, now you've lost a lot of that key data.
Yep. One of the analogies I think about all the time is the building of the pyramids. Historians don't know exactly how many people built the pyramids, but they estimate somewhere between 20 to 40,000 people built all of the great pyramids over, I think it was probably over 100 years. I can't remember how long it took them. But in our contact center workforces, something like 5,000 years later, here we are with the most advanced technology that has ever existed in the history of humankind. And we'll have thousands of people in contact center seats that are just focused on one-on-one interactions with customers. Everything they know just disappears and poofs out of their heads. What a shame. Like the pyramids is an example of when you have everyone in orchestration working together toward a common goal, what you're able to accomplish. And the contact center with the high attrition, people in, people out, constantly ramping and re-ramping and coaching and re-coaching people. Example of what happens if you don't pool the common knowledge toward a common goal. And that's what we want to do, is pool all of the contact center knowledge that folks have toward the common goal of great customer experiences that drive lifetime value, revenue, and prevent problems with compliance and inefficiencies.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think, and I'm trying to think back in the day when we started to automate rebuttals, it was almost kind of that process to where we would, instead of having a sheet, we would have a tab. Instead of having a tab, but we always ran into the struggle of how do we update that and how does that change? Because people's objections changed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So all of a sudden you get close to Christmas, what happens? If you're doing some type of sales or some type of fundraising campaign, well, call me after Christmas, or I'm not going to have enough money for Christmas, so on and so forth. So let me make sure I'm hearing this right. So based on your technology, those variables are going to be in there because the system is always learning. It's always telling you at the right time, no matter what time of year, these are the things that you should say. Is that correct?
Yep. And if you think about it, when the world changes, how long does it take for everyone in the contact center to consistently be up on the new method, the new process, the new messaging? It can take months. It can take months. But we see sometimes with things like COVID that changes aren't happening over the course of months. They're happening instantly. So how are you constantly picking out the data from what is going on in the world, what your customers need you to be talking about, and how they need you to be helping them? How can you pick out that data and be not over a 3-month period of time making one change a quarter to your processes, but having it fluid, having it in stream, having it in real time, where there's always little changes, little improvements, little changes, little improvements. It's like an agile methodology for the contact center. And that's what happens when you turn your contact center from an organization that does things in big batches and then tries to apply them to a real-time contact center, which fundamentally the conversations are happening in real time. So shouldn't the contact center operate in real time?
Yeah, I like that. I like that because again, you're bringing AI and I like the AI because everything's AI now. So when you go to these shows, you got AI chatbots, you got AI voice bots, you got AI so on and so forth, to where I think there's almost AI fatigue
So much
when I talk
noise.
to people, right? And so I look at you at AI, but I also really look at the fact that you're enhancing agents. You're not replacing agents. You're not saying, hey, what some people try to sell is due to revenue or due to cost, we're going to replace agents with some type of AI to where the customer service and the customer experience is worse. Because we all know long IVR systems. We all know chat bots that can't quite get to the answer. In your case, you're not saying, hey, I want to eliminate agents. I want to enhance them. I want to make your agent experience better. Because we realize that agents and customer service and customer experience go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. It's funny, Michael. Folks will ask sometimes, Mark, how far away do you think we are from fully automating the agent? And then I'll joke with them and say, well, I think we're a lot closer to fully automating the supervisor, right? Um, and it's tongue in cheek because I think that we're far away from both of those realities.
Yeah,
But if you think about ultimately how the contact center delivers value to the business, um, it delivers value to the business in that there is a customer and there is an agent, and they are linked with a conversation. That's the whole point, is to be handling and scaling, handling conversations at scale to link the customer need to something that the agent can deliver and hopefully generate value on both sides.
correct.
So we can't be focusing way up here only on the different contact center metrics and utilization and handle time. Like, that's important, but you absolutely need to look at it at the atomic level of the conversation. That is where the value is transmitted. And then what is the mechanism that transmits that value? It's an agent. You can't have these conversations without the agent. And if the agent is happy and the agent is growing and developing their skills, if the agent is fulfilled, if they're well trained, if they're well equipped with technology, that all translates to a better experience for the customer. And it helps retain that knowledge, that tribal knowledge that agents have, and
Yep.
spread it around, because folks are more likely to be successful, and they're more likely to hit their ramp goals, and they're more likely to stay because they're making a good living for themselves and their families. We are a very agent-centric technology because of the critical element that agents ultimately are the ones delivering this value through effective conversations.
I don't think people understand the impact of what you're talking about, because when I ran a call center, when I was an agent, I was really good on the phones. Okay. I was top 1%, really good in fundraising and in sales. So they made me a manager. Okay. Why did they make me a manager? Because they wanted me to duplicate what I could do to all the other people. That's why they made me a manager. Now, they didn't make me a manager because I'm this nice guy and I had all the knowledge of how to train and teach people. They said, Mike, you duplicate exactly they need to sound like you, they need to talk like you, and they need to say what you say. And if you can do that, you're going to move your way up. So I did that, and I did that really successfully. So then they said, hey, Mike, we're going to give you an office, and we want you to train your coaches and your managers to train your agents to do exactly what you did, right? And so it all comes from that very point of that duplication. Now, COVID hits and everything else hits. You're saying you can take that same process that we've done for years upon years upon years of duplication, reduplication, and you can do it. And now you're shortening that time frame, right? You're taking all that knowledge and you're saying, hey, your guys can say this. All you have to focus on now is how they sound. All you have to focus on now is not what they say, but how they say it.
That is absolutely, the power has never been more important with these hybrid workplaces, because communicating that information, organizing how do you want to come across to your customers has never been trickier, with especially folks in so many different locations.
Yeah.
But there's it's a fundamental law of the universe that exists, and that's like the law of entropy. And the basic concept behind entropy, which is also called like chaos or disorder, is that whenever you transmit something or whenever you change something, there's always a little bit of loss that happens, right? So you think about a game of telephone. Whenever two people are talking a game of telephone, there's a little bit of loss. You're not going to be able to say exactly what the other person said in the exact same tone and pace and cadence. There's a little bit of loss. So when you had to typically do that process, Mike, where you're training your coaches, and so first of all, you're trying to remember what you did that was successful, and you're like, okay, I think this is why I was successful. So you come up with that picture, and then you train your coaches. You say, this is why I was successful. And then your coaches train the agents, and they say, this is what you got to do to be successful. And then the agents try to remember it and actually apply it on their calls. There's a lot of loss that happens from you trying to remember why you're successful to the agents actually executing those effective conversations. And we want to completely compress that as a company. That's something that, our philosophy is you can only do it in real time. You can only do it by providing that guidance at the point that it's needed, because every moment away, every moment further you get from the point that you need that information, you need that knowledge, you need that skill, every moment further away you are is a moment that you're less likely to actually act on all the stuff that you know. So you need it right there in the moment. And, that's one of the reasons that we think that real-time systems in general, real-time guidance systems in the contact center are going to be massive over this next decade.
So we use the term, you snooze, you lose, you hesitate, you're done, right? So that was the key to rebuttaling. As soon as you hesitate and had to think, you lose. It's over. You had to know what they're going to say before they say it. So in this case, it's going to give you that ability. The other piece that I found really interesting is when you kind of talk about, taking it into a real-time call center, right? So a real-time reaction. I would say that call centers, even today, are ran based on reactionary numbers of what we read on reports, right? And so we get the reports as a manager. We're looking at them in the morning, and then we're setting up our day, right? We're like, conversion rate was low. Okay, well, average gift or whatever the metric is was low. And then we're creating this game plan, right, to go execute. But again, if I'm hearing this right, you're saying, hey, that's a very reactive way, right? Why not do that as things are fluid? Why not make that process and allow the agents to make that change without a manager having to be able to game plan, because the system is learning and it's identifying the right things to say at the right time.
Think about a parallel from the manufacturing space, just-in-time manufacturing. Why did folks do just-in-time manufacturing? Well, one piece of it is that if everything happens only when it's needed, you can perfectly stack up all the different parts of the process and crunch it and make it faster, right?
Right.
So from the moment that you start to the moment you're done, it's your process to create the next widget is faster. But another big piece of it is spoilage of the inventory, which is that when you were creating something and you create 5,000 widgets and you let them sit there on the factory floor, some of them are going to go bad. The mice are going to get into some of the other ones. Someone's going to like trip over, some part of your inventory, ruin it. It's going to get lost in transit. And one of the big pieces of power of just-in-time manufacturing is that you're accountable for every individual unit, because the second that the unit is ready, the unit is getting moved to the next step of the process and then delivered to the customer. So the contact center needs to be a just-in-time organization. The second there is that customer communication, that need that you can service, the right resources need to be there to solve it. It needs to get solved, and then the customer needs to go back out into the world making the most of it. Think about how many happy customers leave contact center conversations. They exist. They absolutely do. How many happy customers leave and never say a word about it to anybody? Like, what is the opportunity if you could capture 10% of the people that go out in the world happy and get to write a review for your business, get them to tweet about you or put something on the web and say, wow, had a great experience with this airline. Wouldn't it be nice if the airline's Twitters were filled with people saying, I love your airline, your service was so good?
Yeah, don't even get me started on the airlines and having to call those places, and it's a nightmare. So let's talk about numbers, right? So I'm a numbers guy. I've been in call centers my whole life. So I'm assuming that you've done some testing, assuming that you've probably brought on some cases to baseline. So if I'm a sales organization or I'm an organization that's doing it the old way, right? So I'm doing it. I have my rebuttals hung up, or I have sheets in front of them, or I have I get it. Every single one's going to be different. I've done fundraising, I've done sales, I've done so on and so forth. I mean, what type of lift are we talking? So if I invested into Balto, I invested into you, and I said, you know what, I'm really bought into this real-time call center stuff. I'm really bought into this. What's the ROI? What's the lift? In general, like, what are you seeing that call centers are staying with you and adding more seats?
Yeah. So I'll answer just super directly to start.
Sure.
Typically 15 to 25%.
Okay.
That's about common. If you were to create a distribution of results, most results are seeing a 15 to 25% lift. In terms of what's possible, we have had customers who have gotten a 100% lift, greater than 100% lift. And how is that? We forget, and I'll talk about the sales space for a minute, how much of a mathematical lever there is in the conversion rate. So, let's imagine that you have a 20% conversion rate, which is pretty typical. Most folks would say they're doing a good job. Well, there's a baked-in assumption. People talk about the 20% close rate that, the 80% loss rate is inevitable. Oh, those were all the disqualified folks. They wouldn't have bought for anything. Those are the people we had to weed out. But let's say for a minute that out of those 80%, that 1 out of 8, you really could have won. 1 out of 80%. If you had just done it differently, if you had gotten to understand the need better, if you had positioned your product better, you would have won. Well, 1/8 of 80% is 10 points of close rate. And 10 points of close rate on a 20% close rate is, 10 is half of 20, a 50% increase in revenue.
Sure.
So the lever around conversion rates to be able to just go capture some of that lost stuff that you previously were losing and turn it into wins, what that actually ultimately does to revenue is astonishing. Not a lot of different equations in that case, the sales space like it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely right. And assuming that's why you guys are hyper focused in sales and in things that generate conversion rates versus customers. I mean, I'm sure you do customer service and stuff, but I would see the direct impact of what you say, when you say it, how you say it in a sales environment or a fundraising or some type of immediate, one call close type environment is highly critical.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I get it. There's going to be multiple touches. I get the multiple phone calls, but if you're assuming that, out of 1 out of 8 and that's not a lot. So you're saying that 1 out of 8, if you would have said the right thing at the right time and the right approach, that you could have converted that person or at least got to the next level, maybe a demo or something like that, then obviously the solution is going to pay for itself, let alone, I mean, we haven't even got into the customer service experience part, right? So we're all talking about what's going to get them to say yes at the right time. Now, if your agents are saying the right things at the right time, even if they're not closing it, there's still an impact there, right?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things there. The first is, I just gave you a sales use case. What's special about that? And the answer is that we want to find contact centers where our technology is as close to the money as humanly possible. The reason is that buying any sort of AI, because it's new and there's a lot of noise out there, there's a natural concern or skepticism around it. So we want to make it so easy for people to see, wait a minute, I get this AI, more money comes into my business's bank account. That easy. And a sales use case is one step away from that. Yeah. With customer service teams, the first focus, actually tends to be efficiency. And it's so interesting because, we'll talk to folks and, we'll say, what's the most important thing? And they say CSAT, absolutely, hands down. And then we say, great, well, we just built a business case around CSAT. They said, well, is it also going to make my calls faster? Can you reduce our handle time? And it's like, okay. At the end of the day, like, you definitely want CSAT, but you need to justify it to your CFO or whoever you're trying to justify it with increases in efficiency. So we'll show how you can reduce average handle times. And, usually you're looking between like 8 to 15% reduction in average handle time. And if you're, if you have a 10-minute call and you're shaving off a minute per call or per interaction, that's pretty meaningful.
Absolutely.
So that's a big part of our customer service value. But I'll say one thing, and this is kind of the vision of our company, is we want to transform the contact center into a profit center. There's no reason that the contact center should be getting tens of thousands or millions of customer touch points and not being able to use that to invest in the customer lifetime value and invest in the different revenue opportunities they have. It makes no sense. You can't just service these customers and send them out into the world.
Well, you kind of get into my world when we start talking about omni-channel, so on and so forth. The first issue is people have multiple systems and they have no way to track the transactions based on the customer, right? So, when we start getting into like preferred method of communication, how should you be communicating to people? And, just the first step is being able to have that data within a workable model. I find in the call center space, you still have what I call it the bolt-on system, right? So you have your dialer. inbound, outbound dialer. I've had it forever. It works great, whatever. Then you have an SMS type, solution, and maybe an email. You might be using internal email. And then when you start to look at social media, chat, Facebook, so on and so forth, you're going to bolt on that third solution. And so you have activities going on in three different solutions where the experience can't be the same. I mean, it's not going to be similar. And then the data and being able to pull that information back to kind of what you were saying is how can you utilize that data to make it a profit center? I find the first step in the technology chain is get your technology, in order, get your house in order, and to where you can have that information, have that data, have the technology piece like an omni-channel or vice versa that will allow you quickly to be able to act on that data. And that's where I see a big challenge in the space. That's is somebody that's in the technology and talking to people about omni-channel. We're not there yet. And we're a ways off to where the technology's there. But until voice starts, I think, slowing down to a point where they realize that digital is important outside of chat. I would say chat's still it's a growing channel, I would say right now. But Facebook and WhatsApp and Telegram and these other messaging tools, I have adult children. That is right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even text my kids anymore. Where texting is kind of the new phone call. That level of 21, 22, 18, 17, 16-year-olds that are going to be the new workforce, they use messaging systems. And so having that technology that's going to be able to tie that information together, I think is going to be crucial to your envision, which is having a real-time call center, being able to act on those real-time information.
I think that's totally right. And I think that it's interesting because we've started hearing folks distinguish now between omni-channel and multi-channel, right? Where omni-channel implies that the different channels are integrated and that you can move between one channel to another channel seamlessly, whereas multi-channel just means you have all the channels.
Right.
Are we, is the contact center industry an omni-channel industry right now as much as they wish they were? No. I would even say that most of the time, they're not even a multi-channel industry. Perhaps they're just launching their second channel or just launching their third channel or, looking at their results, for their chat platform, which a lot of folks launched in the pandemic, and then they launched quickly and they found that they weren't getting the results they wanted. And then now a lot of folks are like readjusting how they're using their chat, and it's getting a lot better. People are starting to see an ROI from it that they were hoping for a little while ago. All that is still happening right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's a lot of the conversations that I have with my customers is at what point do you make that decision? I will give them credit. So a lot of people have made the transition to the cloud. So you have a lot less, dialers in-house, right? You have a lot less systems that are housed to where now they're moving to the cloud. They're starting to realize what APIs are. They're starting to realize how they can communicate. I think one of the questions we had was eliminate attrition, reduce absenteeism, filled hard to staff shifts, now accelerate into real OpEx efficiencies, thereby increasing margins. So I think one of the challenges that we continue to see in the call center space is hiring, attrition, right people, right time. I would say that a lot of the conversations I have, how can Balto help with that?
Well, first of all, I think that one of the things, if I'm going to kind of extrapolate maybe what I was, hearing from that user who posted the comment, a piece of it may be about the importance of integrated data, right? What happens when you can actually predict your volumes, you're properly filling your shifts, you know what channels you can be expecting the interactions on and when, and that super integrated data
Sure.
is really important to that. In terms of how Balto impacts, attrition, agent
Yeah.
attrition. Well, first of all, we haven't actually measured it yet. We've heard a lot of really positive anecdotal stuff, but we're just starting to measure that now. So we're going to be excited to be releasing data on that shortly. But I think that you can just look at the fundamentals and say, let's imagine that your agents are more productive, that they're doing
Yep.
a better job, that when they get yelled at, they have something they can lean on to handle that, and that
Right.
most of the time it results in a better outcome than it did before. That all of this means that instead of them getting their paycheck taken at the end of the month because they got QA'd on the 31st and they learned that they fell below standards for their 4 calls for that month and they missed out on their bonus, that they know right away how they're doing in every single call in every single moment and are able to earn more of those bonuses. What is that going to do to attrition? Well, I'm excited to find out. But
Yeah.
I think that there's just a very clear principle that happy people, are people that are less likely to leave. So how do we make our contact center workforce as happy as humanly possible? And in this war for talent that we see right now, and the fact that it's harder to hire than ever, the easiest person to hire is the one who's currently working for you. So rather than having to go out and recruit, how can we do a better job retaining people? And talk about a lever there. What if you're able to reduce your attrition by 10%? What if you were previously attriting 100% year over year, and you're 1,000-seat contact center, so you're hiring 1,000 new people every year. And what if now you had 100 people that stayed at full productivity after a year that otherwise wouldn't have? I mean, the ROI on that is massive as well.
Yeah, I will tell you from practical experience. If you make people successful, they'll do what you say. If you tell them what to say and it works, they'll continue to do what you say. And then we always say that sales cures everything. It cures attendance. It cures HR issues. It cures everything. So when somebody feels like they're successful or they're being successful, it puts them in a position to where they're less likely to take that job, even if they're offering them $1 more an hour. They're less likely to take that job, even if it's a little easier. Now, I will promise you, I was running operations during COVID, and to try to find people to employ was a challenge, especially in the outbound type of call center environment. You're asking them to do harder work. You're asking them to be able to take more abuse because they're trying to persuade somebody with something. And you're going to do that where there's another position that may be open that is easier. Maybe it's all inbound calls, or maybe it's a customer service job. So I think you're onto something. I will be very interested in seeing those statistics, because I've always known that if somebody feels successful, you're giving them the tools to be successful, and they feel like they're a part of that 20%, that top 20% of the call center, they're not going nowhere. And if they do, they come right back, because that's just the reality in a call center and the reality of being successful. And that's what I've seen year after year after year of managing call centers. So I think you're right. I think, playing that out in the numbers will be awesome to see.
Yeah.
So if somebody's interested in Balto, how do they get a hold of you, Mark? How do they get to see a demo, all that good stuff?
Well, they can learn more about Balto by going to balto.ai, BALTO.ai, and they can get a demo there. And they
Okay.
can find me on LinkedIn. I'm linkedin.com/in/Balto CEO.
Awesome. We have a really good relationship with Balto. We are also bringing on new clients and work together. Our systems work together great. Actually, I think I have the Balto toolbar on my system now. So when we were looking at the system, every time I boot up, it comes live. So awesome company. I think it's a real need. I think people in the space, especially the space that you're catering to, have done it the way that I explained for many and many of years. And I think just having the ability to automate a lot of those things that they know that work, have the agents say what they know the top agents are saying, being able to do that real time without hesitation. It's all stuff that makes sense that we've been doing for years. So I think I see you guys all over the place. Obviously you're growing. You're not going to be at shows and going all over the place if you guys weren't growing. So it's excited to see customers that I have using your product. And I've really had a good conversation. I think it's been awesome. Glad you're my first guest. And love to have you on again.
Mike, thank you so much. Tons of fun. Really appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you. All right. That was good, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, you are very welcome. And